In Hartford, Hereford, Hampshire.
Hello everybody, this is Yael. Today we will talk about language, communication and linguistics in cinema. So we will talk mainly about movies. Maybe later on I will do something similar for TV shows, documentaries in particular and other things. But today we will focus on movies only. I avoided parodies and horror simply because I cannot stand horror. I cannot watch it. I'm totally unable to watch horror. So if you are into that genre, there is one movie that I can suggest simply because I started watching it but I wasn't able to finish it, and that is Pontypool. But other than that, I don't know what to suggest you. I had to divide them into categories because at first my idea was the linguistic landscape of cinema starting from the early years. So let's say in the 1920s or so, what's the first movie about linguistics or languages that was ever made. So I wanted to do something like one movie per decade or a couple of movies per decade, but it turned out to be way more difficult than I thought. Ultimately, I had to organize these movies into thematic categories instead. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe and let's dive into it, shall we? The first category includes language in terms of speech and the ability to speak. In the first category, I have three movies. First, Pygmalion and or My Fair Lady, respectively 1938 and 1964, because My Fair Lady is a musical adaptation of Pygmalion, but you might be more familiar with My Fair Lady. The premise is a challenge between a phonetician and a fellow speech expert. As they are walking around in London, they listen to people talking, and as they hear a girl, a flower girl, talking with this Cockney accent, first the phonetician bets that he will be able to pass her as a duchess within only 3 months. But then his friend agrees on paying the expenses, but betting on 6 months instead, and to make her pass as a lady.
How kind of you to let me come.
How kind of you to...
Basically, this film is about societal expectations and language and the ability to speak in a certain way. So it's a bit more political and it has to do with class. Even more Pygmalion from 1938 rather than the musical version. So this is the first movie. Then The King's Speech, which again it's very popular, from 2010, and this is about King George VI, who struggled with asthma and his collaboration with his speech therapist. So in this movie they highlight the pivotal role of linguistics, but especially the ability to speak and to be articulate and all of that, given the specific position in which this man is finding himself. And third in this category we have Still Alice from 2014, in which the protagonist is a linguistics professor who is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Thus we see her struggle, like coming to terms with the disease itself and also being quite young considering the type of disease. There is not much linguistics, let's say, because there's barely like 1 or maybe 2 instances in which you see her working as a linguist, and so you just see like the beginning of a class or maybe a talk, conference or something, but you really see very little. It's more about the loss that comes along with this kind of disease, and so what that entails. And there are many other movies in this specific subcategory, let's say, so injuries and diseases that affect in some way language, the ability to communicate. So you have, for instance, The Theory of Everything, which is about Stephen Hawking's life, and regarding Henry, which is about an injury, and so how the protagonist is affected by that injury. But these are not too much about language and linguistics in particular, rather than like Still Alice, at least the protagonist is a linguist, which is quite rare in cinema. So that's why I mentioned that one. But there are so many more in that field, let's say. The second category is about sign language, but also communication in general, because we see pioneers experimenting with communication and communication tools. So in this category we also have 3 movies. The first one is The Miracle Worker. I watched the 2000 version, but there are 2 more from 1962 and 1979. And just let me point out the impressive acting skills of the child actress, Hallie Kate Eisenberg, in this 2000 version. She is incredible. It is a true story set in the 1880s, in which we see Helen Keller, which is this child who is deaf and blind, and her teacher, Annie Sullivan, who employs innovative techniques in language and communication to break through Helen's isolation, because nobody was able to communicate with her and her family. And Annie Sullivan was a former blind girl who had been operated several times and was now able to see with some precautions. She's wearing dark glasses the entire time, but that's why she learned sign language and other techniques that she will then apply to this specific case and change Helen Keller's life entirely. Then, a bit similar to this, it's After the Silence from 1996, in which we have Laura, the main character, who is a 20-year-old illiterate deaf girl. At the beginning of the movie, she is rescued from neglect and abuse from her father by a social worker, Pam, who will teach Laura sign language from scratch. And now you can see the difficulty in this case is that this is a grown-up already, so she's 20 years old, and nobody has ever even tried to communicate with her. And this movie is interesting also because you see the social worker's life as well. So you can also see the struggles of a social worker and what's her life like, her job. But it's a heartwarming story, just like the previous one. And on a similar note, but in this case we don't have to do with sign language anymore, we have Nell from 1994. In Nell, we follow the life of a wild child who grew up in the forests of North Carolina, and she communicates in a language of her own. It's basically a made-up language vaguely based on English, but nobody is able to understand her. She also behaves like a wild child. She is discovered by a town doctor and a researcher who is an expert on autistic children. And so in this movie there's this whole journey of finding ways to communicate and understanding how Nell communicates and why she communicates that way. So even though these 3 movies are not exactly in the same category, let's say, this last movie doesn't really fit in the same category, I wasn't sure where else to put it. I would recommend all 3. Now, the third category includes only 2 movies, and it's about linguistics per se and communication with aliens. In this category, I decided to put Arrival, 2016, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind from 1977. Arrival is the most famous in terms of linguistics because it's the most accurate. It really portrays a linguist doing her job and the research method and all of that. So far, I haven't been able to find a more fitting movie in terms of linguistics. And that's why you find plenty of videos about this. But yeah, it's a sci-fi masterpiece delving into the linguistic challenges of communicating with aliens, in which you can also see how language shapes the way we think and we see the world. So it reinforces this idea. And then Close Encounters of the Third Kind, it's quite interesting because it uses music instead as the main language to communicate with aliens. And in this movie you can see the protagonist who is obsessed with this message and this concept that has been put in his mind, and he cannot get rid of it. He needs to decipher and figure out what's going on in his mind. For most of the movie you are wondering what's going on, what's this sound, what's this message, and so on. The interesting side of it is that they use music as a language. Now, for the fourth category, we have language-related professions. So you can see some of these movies might fit in several categories. So of course in Arrival you have a language-related profession, but it's also about aliens and all of that. So in this case I decided to keep just two movies in this category, which are The Interpreter and Youth Without Youth. The Interpreter from 2005 is about an interpreter at the United Nations who is fluent in a fictional African language, which is inspired by Shona and Swahili. And in this movie, you don't really see much of her job. So what does it mean to be an interpreter? You don't see much of that. You see more of this like diplomatic role of language in international relations. So it's more of a thriller espionage movie. And this applies to Youth Without Youth as well. And it's about a 70-year-old linguist who all of a sudden becomes 35 again, and his main goal in life is to write about the origins of language. So he is an Orientalist. First he's an expert on Chinese, then he learns other languages as well. But again we have some sci-fi elements, espionage, and yes, there is a portrayal of several ancient languages, but there is not much about the method. Then let's say that this is a subcategory of language-related professions, because these are two movies about linguists as explorers. So the first one is Stargate from 1994, in which a linguist and Egyptologist is transported to another planet, and that's where his knowledge of ancient languages proves useful, because the natives speak a variety that has evolved from ancient Egyptian. So this is not too believable, because in here you can see him translating on the spot and all of that, but it's not too realistic, of course. It's not only because it's sci-fi, because Arrival is also sci-fi. It's simply because in this movie his profession is quite simplified and it's not the focus of the movie, it's more of an action film. And this movie has quite the same issues as the next one, which is Atlantis, The Lost Empire from 2001, which is also the only animated movie on the entire list. And in Atlantis we see a linguist who soon becomes an explorer. And yes, you can see a little bit of the language and interpretation, and him reading this book and trying to read the language of Atlantis and learn it. But again, he picks up the language a bit too quickly, even when they arrive, and he has to communicate with the locals, and especially when he has to read ancient texts and all of that. But still, if you like movies about linguists who are explorers, these are two examples. Then we have probably the largest category, and this is why I will not go into detail, but the fifth category is languages in terms of artificial or fictional languages. And here you have the Lord of the Rings trilogy, all Star Trek movies, the Star Wars movies, you even have The Fifth Element and all of that. So there are so many more in which you have either a hint to an alien language, or they have developed an entire new language which is developed only for this setting.
Deutsch wird's auch noch, read!
Live long and prosper.
It's a huge category, and there is also plenty of information about these movies. So maybe I was thinking about going a bit into details in the future, especially with like specific episodes of the TV shows and or the movies, for instance for Star Trek and maybe also Star Wars and then The Lord of the Rings, but these are well known already, and so maybe they don't really need too much exploration, even from a linguistic perspective. But still, if you're interested, I'm pretty sure that I will do something about Star Trek. Then we have category number 6, in which I decided to put 2 movies only for language in literature and academia. And this might be debatable because I wasn't sure how to categorize these ones. Probably there are many more, I'm just not sure about them. But let's see. So first I decided to put The Dead Poets Society from 1989 and The Great Debaters from 2007. So why? The first one celebrates language in literature and how it inspires and transforms lives. And so the film follows an English teacher who encourages his students to embrace poetry as a means of self-expression. This is very well known. And The Great Debaters, in which for once the Italian version has a proper title, because it's literally The Power of Words. And that's exactly like at the end of the movie, that was my main thought. That really fits the description of the movie, because it's the journey of a black debate team from a small Texas college in the 1930s, which is led by their inspirational coach as they challenge racial discrimination and academic barriers. But they also showcase the power of rhetoric and resilience in the pursuit of justice and equality. This is a bit of a strong movie, especially a couple of scenes, so just beware of that. But yeah, there are other movies that have competition, such as like the classics competition in the Emperor's Club, but this is more about classics and not the language that you use to define classics and all of that. Whereas for The Great Debaters, you really see the power of every single word. But yeah, I hope that you will have some recommendations for more language or linguistics and academia movies, because it's not the easiest one to find, especially because the main topic is never language or linguistics, it's more something else. But a subcategory for this is language in terms of words only. Here I put Aquila and the Bee from 2006, in which Aquila, who is an 11-year-old African-American girl who discovers that she has a talent for spelling. And so in the movie we see the supportive community that she has that helps her prepare for competitive spelling. And then we also have The Professor and the Madman from 2019, which is based on true events, in which Professor James Murray works on compiling words for the first edition of the Oxford English Dictionary. And this is in the mid-19th century. He does it with the help of a physician who is imprisoned in an insane asylum. And finally, even though I said I wanted to talk about movies only in this video, I had to include one documentary, which is The Linguists from 2008, simply because it shows two linguists who do fieldwork. They film in three main different locations: in Siberia, in India, and the American Southwest, as they work with endangered languages, the Native American communities. They explore the cultural impact of English colonization in India, and they shed light on the diversity and fragility of human languages worldwide. And I'm quite surprised that this is basically the only documentary about this topic, or maybe it's the only one that I could get my hands on, probably. But there are many more documentaries around language communication and linguistics. So, for instance, I found a couple of documentaries on YouTube for free about several disorders. Yeah, these are also very short documentaries. So if you're interested, I might make a video on that only. These are all the movies that I could find, watch, and recommend you. But please, I need more recommendations. If you find anything else language related or any other movie that you would recommend, please write it down in the comments down below, because I'm always looking for new movies to watch. If you want to recommend TV shows or documentaries, please do so, because again, I'm planning to do several more videos about this topic in the future. And this was also just to show you, like, based on my passion about linguistics, the lack of movies about linguistics. I know that it's not the most thrilling topic, maybe, but again, if you put linguists, some kind of exploration setting, or if you put them in front of aliens and all of that, so it's all fascinating to me, and I hope there will be more movies about linguistics in the future. I'm not sure, I mean, we had to wait 2016 for Arrival, so... But yeah, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, hit that notification bell, and I will see you in the next one.